Generally, you'll find the masculine, again, they're more logical, more analytical, they're very goal-orientated, task-orientated, focused, that's why you see like career-driven, what's next. Then you've got the feminine energy, and so this is more free-spirited and playful and very nurturing and loving and caring, the sort of provider, but in a different way, providing those emotional needs. They're generous, they're curious, and
in 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being moulded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young podcast. Today's episode, we are switching it up. No more business or personal development. This episode is all about masculine and feminine energies, relationships between men and women, and understanding that we are different and need to approach each other differently. After having some videos blow up on TikTok about masculinity, showing emotions, I received hundreds of comments and how grateful people were that someone was talking about this topic. So I decided to dedicate an entire episode to this topic. In this episode, I bring on Tylah Jane, who is a midwife delivering babies full time. She also has a YouTube channel and puts out lots of content for other midwives. I met her at a retreat and we got deep into a discussion about masculine and feminine energies, and I thought it would be a great conversation for you guys to hear. This ended up being an awesome conversation that is really important for young people to be aware of. For some reason, school doesn't teach us anything about relationships and how to handle them, yet every single person who graduates high school will need to have these skills for life. So that is what this episode is all about. As per usual, please consider leaving a rating or review on the show if you're getting any value out of it, and feel free to reach out to me on Instagram DMs, Byron__Dempsey, to let me know what you thought of this episode. Now, over to Tylah. All right, Tylah, welcome so much to the show.
thank you for having me on.
Super excited to chat about kind of masculine and feminine, get into a few things about you. But before we get into all of that nitty gritty stuff, I'd love to know just a little bit about you and kind of what you did after high school and what you're currently up to.
So I think for me, like most people, they really struggled deciding what they wanted to do, but I got very lucky with just having a light bulb moment. I was sitting next to a girl in class and she was like, oh, maybe I'll be a midwife. And it was like, yeah, I was struck by lightning and I thought that's what I would do. But on my way there, sort of struggled with what's right. The idea of something always seems a lot better than how it is in practice.
Actually implementing it.
100%. And yeah, we create this fantasy of what a career might look like or what something might look like, but in practice you've got the everyday nitty gritty paperwork and things like that. And so just for any listeners out there, what actually is a midwife? Like, what do you do? What's your role? So the classic answer would be I catch babies. But of course there's a lot more than that. It's pregnancy, birth and postnatal. It's really just being with women, which is what midwife means.
So you've delivered a lot of babies, I assume.
Yes.
So what's that experience been like for you in terms of, like, is it traumatic? Is it beautiful? Is it a bit of both?
It can be everything. And for me, as like someone in my 20s, it's such a beautiful insight into life and death. As well as relationships and everything in between. Yeah,
awesome. So you were lucky in terms you had that light bulb moment.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of people aren't quite as lucky. I was kind of the same as you. I knew I wanted to do video or film or something. I've seen quite a lot off that path, but as you can see, we've got cameras here. Like those video skills have implemented quite a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess, so to give a little bit of reference to the listeners, we met at a retreat. And that retreat was where we're all writing a chapter of a book for what advice we would give our 18-year-old self or our younger self. And I'd just love to know a little bit how you found that retreat, and was it inspiring? Like, what was it like being surrounded by kind of cool people like that?
So it seems a bit unusual, I guess, for a midwife to be on this sort of retreat, which was described a little bit personal development, a little bit.
Yeah, it was quite like an entrepreneurial retreat almost. Yeah.
And so basically I always knew, yes, I wanted to be a midwife, but I always had this hunger for something more. I don't think I could just settle doing shift work for the rest of my life. So when I was 19, I went to a few entrepreneurial seminars and I actually ended up interning with someone who was working in that space. At this time, I got a lot of flack and resistance from my parents who were like, no, don't do unpaid internship. Don't be working for nothing. That person's trying to manipulate you. That person's trying to use you. And I really let fear grab me by the throat and push me back down, only now to be 24 and surfacing back into that area because it's just called me back. I just want to do something that's bigger impact than the day-to-day.
And it's so important because, you know, I was actually quite lucky. So my parents have never done that to me. They've always kind of supported whatever their kids wanted to do, which is quite rare, I know. And obviously going from stable shift work to like whatever it is you're doing, entrepreneurial, like internship, it can be a shock to them. But that's a world we're living right now. And that's, you know, so many people are just interested to see what your thoughts are when it comes to our generation, hate the idea of working the same job for 20, 30 years. If it's the same shift work, if it's whatever it is, it makes us feel kind of sick. And I agree. I wouldn't want to work the same job for 30, 40, 50 years like other previous generations have.
Well, I think as humans, naturally, one of our most basic needs is growth. And I found like once I'm in a hospital for a year, I'm like, nah, I'm out. What's the next journey for me? Because I need that constant stimulation, something new. And now I'm sort of finding those things externally online, creating content for women. I still have this niche of midwifery, but now I'm able to explore what that might look like, say, online, or what that could look like, you know, serving people in different ways.
Yeah, so you're putting out content for women in that niche.
Exactly.
And that's something that you can do. I've spoken about this before. Whatever you're passionate about, you can find a way to create money through that. So if you're passionate about being a midwife, you don't have to think so linear. You could actually go and create all this content and make money through sponsorships or go on podcasts just like this. Through that sort of avenue.
And the thing is, I think people say, yeah, that sounds great for you to say, good for you to say you're doing it. For me, what I want to say is when you are living in alignment and when you are doing that, those opportunities do come to you. So for me recently, I used to put out YouTube videos when I was a student for other student midwives, just giving them a little bit of support and some tips. And then a baby company found me and wanted me to work with them. So I would say, don't worry about how it's going to play out. Just start working with those things in alignment, put yourself out there, and the opportunities will come to you.
100%. And this kind of leads back to something we both learned at the retreat.
Yeah.
And I've already believed in, but it was quite solidified at this retreat, was the opening 1,000 doors. So if you just open one door, that could lead to there's 999, or there's 1,000 doors behind that one door. So if you just put out some content on YouTube like you did, what has that done for you? Nothing directly, but suddenly someone reaches out to you and now you do some work for them, and then someone finds you through them, and it just goes on top of each other just like that.
Exactly. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from even starting. And for me, I never had money as the motivation, and I think that's why it worked, because I just wanted to create something I was passionate about, and I wanted to get a message across. I didn't go in being like, this is going to make me $1 million. I just went in wanting to give and contribute, not thinking about myself, but thinking about others. What can I offer with where I'm at? And then the opportunities just flowed.
Awesome. And before we kind of jump into masculine and feminine and get to the meat of what the conversation is, I'd love to just know a little bit of your key takeaways and what you've learned as a midwife. Is because, as we mentioned, it can be very traumatic, it can be very beautiful, and everything in between. Like, what are some takeaways you've learned as kind of being the first person dealing with life and, like, you know, delivering babies, which is a phenomenal experience?
It's such a multifaceted career. I think the biggest thing is the power of letting go and surrendering. How now in our culture and society, we want to measure everything. We want to know exactly what's going to happen, the outcomes, the logic, the analysis. But when it comes to nature and it comes to humans, ultimately it's back to intuition. And for me, I see a lot of these women coming in with these expectations, these things in their head, and they 100% let that be a block and a barrier, when really it's just letting go, getting back into that body, simple things of breath that can really bring things together, and actually listening to what that inner voice is saying. When it comes to parenting, they're like, oh, how often should baby feed? What's this? What's this? But if you sit and you listen, your mind will come up with the answers, and you'll be like, this is what feels right and this is what doesn't feel right.
And the problem with having those expectations is if they're not met, you're disappointed.
100%.
So if you have no expectations and you just go with it, you can't really be disappointed. I mean, you still can, but it's going to be a lot less than if you had expected the baby to feed three times this morning. It didn't feed once, and now you're going, holy crap, what do I do when it's actually fine?
Exactly.
Awesome. Any other takeaways you got from midwifery? I know you had some crazy stories. And
definitely. I mean, yeah, every day is different, and I think I really like that about the career. The thing that I thought I would be scared of the most and wouldn't like the most is actually dealing with death. So a big part of being a midwife is walking with a woman in her grief, and losing a child is part of that. For me, I learned that it's such a privilege and it's such unconditional love to hold these babies, to be one of the only people to know them, and to not, put all these labels. Where's this baby going? Where's this, what's society doing? To just be with like another little being. And I think there's a lot of beauty in that.
Awesome. All right. So as I mentioned, kind of want to talk about masculine, feminine. So we've learned a bit about you. And the reason I brought you on was because at the retreat we were discussing, I don't know how it came up. It just came up. I was probably complaining about something. Who knows? But we're just talking about kind of, I guess, that toxic masculinity and understanding the different energies between men and women. And so you mentioned something when we were driving on the way here just about how often you don't know how to deal with the men in these situations, or the men don't know what to do with their emotions and what they're supposed to be doing when their wife is giving birth or something, and how the men deal with miscarriage and stuff. Because I've actually been working with a woman who does a podcast on basically miscarriages and grief and stuff. And one of the things I mentioned was the men will often not allow themselves to grieve because they know the woman's gone through more because they've carried the baby. Therefore, they're going to be supporting her the entire time, which is great. But they still should be allowed to grieve because I've also just lost a child.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is such a juicy, like multifaceted issue. But I think it stems down from, so I often say, it's really interesting. My life has sort of diverged into two. So I say I've got my midwifery and I look at that as a section of my life. But a common phrase I always use is my greatest form of personal development is dating, and that whole like male-female dynamic. And now I've really been able to merge these two and see how they work. So for me, I find that now the modern man does not know what to offer the woman. Interestingly enough, I had a conversation with my granddad the other day. And he was talking to me, are you seeing anyone? Are you married yet? Sort of thing, the classic that you always get. And I was saying, oh no, I'm dating. I'm meeting a lot of interesting people. I'm learning things about myself. I'm really enjoying it. And then he goes, oh, well, back in my day, a man just needed a good job and that's it. And then you got a wife and you married. And it's like, it seems really hard now with all these emotions and things. And I think that was sort of true of our past. You would ask a man, oh, if he was seeing someone, you'd ask for a photo. But for a woman, it would be like, oh, well, what does he do? So society had this expectation of men to have a good job and women to look pretty. Obviously, this is changing and it's diverging. Yeah, this is like when your granddad, like 50s sort of area. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, this is now changing, but I think there is still some of those after effects there, where a man's role in society used to be that provider, that protector, that supporter through finance, and working, and now they're sort of at a loss. Okay, I'm meeting a woman who is bringing all this to the table herself. What do I bring? What do I offer? And for my answer for this, for the men, whether it be them in a labor and birth room where everything's going on or a simple date, is presence. Now, presence, what I mean by presence is just being in your body, being out of your mind, with your breath, just listening and taking in what that person is saying. It's not thinking, how can I fix this problem? Okay, she's got this problem. Maybe if I do this, I'll do. You can see it feels very different. Presence is very grounded. It's okay. Like, I'm just going to sit with this person in whatever emotion they're feeling, and I'm going to be with them in that. So I say with masculine, feminine, that the man is the riverbank and the woman's the water that flows through.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, what men can really offer is just this sense of security, groundedness, and that relaxed energy. We often complain that men, they don't think, they're too relaxed, they're too this, they're too that, when actually that is their greatest strength, is just taking things as they are, one thing at a time.
Yeah, and you spoke about like how men are often like they release a lot of emotion through anger or through like physically and stuff. We spoke about some other episodes, like a lot of men will be like, oh, if they're all feeling emotional, just go for a run. Let's just go like get it out. And women typically are better at just talking it out, which, as you mentioned, so they'll talk to their boyfriend and he'll be like, how can I fix this? Don't, just sit there and be in the presence. And so I think it's super powerful. And we spoke about how a lot of society doesn't actually see anger as an emotion. We think of emotions like, oh, men are so unemotional because they can't cry or they can't be grounded and show, sadness.
They don't
and
express themselves. You know, they're not crying 1 second and laughing the next. But
whereas, as sad as it is, you know, a man beating his wife, that's him showing his emotion, anger. Like that's bad emotion. Yeah, and that's probably typically why we see a lot more men are aggressive, because that's how they show their emotion. But as we mentioned, society has kind of made anger like it's not an emotion.
Yeah, I think we're really not letting them climb up that emotional scale and reach for those higher, more useful emotions, things like, you know, joy, happiness, even contemplation, usefulness. They're getting sort of stuck in this anger and trying to fill it out that way. We're not really letting them be like, okay, well, let's have a conversation about this. Let's, you know, let's think of some ideas. And that's why they just feel trapped and they need to get it out somehow. Yeah.
I also think it's super important to understand that, like, men and women are different, and we are going to express emotions differently. And women can't expect men to express emotions the same way they do, and men can't expect women to express emotions the same way we do. And it's just understanding that we are different, because I feel like in the world we're chasing, you know, equality between men and women and all that sort of stuff. And we kind of mentioned, like, that's really great, but I feel like we are still different. And pure equality is going to be hard to achieve. And what if we just accepted that we are different and we have different strengths and weaknesses, and we focus on that? It kind of goes like the whole wage gap argument. We're in Australia. I do remember there's like this ad which kind of blew up the whole thing, where they had a boy toddler went in. They both did the same job for their parents. And they go, here's your money, kid. Here's $1 to you, son. Here's daughter. Here's 70 cents to you. And that kind of made everyone go, holy crap, women are getting paid 70 cents and men get to pay $1. When really it's the average man, which has been inflated by hyper successful white men who are probably in like mining companies in Australia, have raised the dollar. But also more like midwifery and nurses are women, because it's more caring and that's more nature and that's what they're more attracted to. And there's more men as engineers and stuff, because that's analytical and that's how men think.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if anything, it's more respecting and lifting up the strengths of each other. So it might be difficult to understand, well, what do we mean by masculine? What do we mean by feminine? And I think it starts with, there's a common phrase now, like, oh, that's a good vibe. That's a vibe, energy. You know, these words are being thrown around and without much understanding of them. And I think what you can feel is, you know, when you're in the presence of the opposite gender, it does feel different sometimes. We all have traits of both masculine and feminine, yin and yang, interacting. But generally you'll find the masculine, again, they're more logical, more analytical, they're very goal-orientated, task-orientated, focused, that's why you see like career driven, what's next, again, video games, let's get to the next level, and that's how they like to think.
For the men there, so men who are, that is them, right? And the problem, and so that's why we've got, obviously times have changed, there's a lot more equality now, but let's say like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, these hyper successful men who are like billionaires, very hard workers, because they're everything you just mentioned, goal orientated, this, that, blah, blah, blah. But almost all of them are divorced multiple times. Steve Jobs at the end of his life said he really struggled and was really disappointed that he had this amazing company that he loved, but he had nothing else really.
Exactly.
He wanted a better relationship with his kids and everything. And so I think while that is really great, then there's such a big downside to it as well.
It's that idea of hustle, 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 work to death. Then you've got the feminine energy, and so this is more free-spirited and playful and very nurturing and loving and caring, the sort of provider, but in a different way, providing those emotional needs. They're generous, they're curious, and I think sometimes men will probably recognize within themselves that, okay, what is it about that woman? Because I can see, you know, objectively, maybe she's not the most traditionally attractive, but there's just something about her.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about your Marilyn Monroes. What is that sort of something extra? It's that feminine energy.
Why was she so attracted to so many men? It's like, sure, she's attractive, but like traditionally there are a lot more attractive women than her, but she was like the standard. She was, you know, the top of the top. And what is that attraction? Is it energy? Like,
it's
I'm
offering,
not sure.
It's offering that expression of that divine feminine. You know, when they're in the presence of a man, it's sort of, you know, being that playful, being that, I guess, loving and supporting and generous person. So you've also got overexpressions of both these genders. And this is what we're seeing a lot of problems within society. So with the man, you've got the overexpression of sort of confidence. So that cockiness and that arrogance. You've got the overexpression of protectiveness, which could be such a sacred thing, but is turned into like overprotective, you know, your classic partner, you can't wear that, you can't go out, you can't see that person. You've got the overaggression, you've got the competitiveness. And this is not to hate on men. It also happens with women.
For sure, yeah.
So their side, the overexpression of feminine, the controlling, the manipulative.
It almost all fits under, psycho is what
exactly,
the label.
the psychoness, the over-emotional, the codependence, like giving and expecting in return without that unconditional love that we're talking about.
Yeah, and it's super important that, because you're right, this is kind of what's causing a lot of things. And basically it's, toxic masculinity. And I'm not sure what the female version of that is.
The toxic femininity, like you were saying, that craziness, that controlling, that stalker, that possessiveness, it happens as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of links back into kind of what we wanted to talk about. There's kind of, not just TikTok, but social media in general has kind of created a landscape of, men, we hate all men. I know it's a joke, and I love that. I take the piss out of that all the time. But I think there's also a level of truth to it. There's a lot of women out there and girls who have never been victimized by men. Half their friends are men. They've been treated really well, yet they still preach there's men are shit, or men are,
there's that narrative,
sort of thing.
These boys ain't shit, like oh, he's just an F-boy, and I have 100% been guilty of that. And a overexpression of femininity is the playing the victim card, and this is not to discount people's actual experiences. This is not what we're doing here, but we're trying to address a bit of a bigger issue of like the battle of the sexes. I know going around on TikTok a lot, there's the book Why Men Love Bitches. And this is actually something that I read and I took on, now realizing how toxic and manipulative that it can be in terms of like, leave him on red.
Is that in the book?
Yeah, like basically
Really?
leave him on red, ignore him, don't reply, pretend, see other people, have a rotation of men going so you don't get attached, etc.,
Right.
etc.
It's call a daddy sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just leave without emotion. I think that in itself can be so super toxic, and we need to be really careful. I understand that, it raises your emotions a bit. You feel a bit empowered. You feel like you've got control, but ultimately love is not control. Love is, like I said, that surrender, that letting go into someone.
I also think a lot of that is because girls kind of go, and guys definitely, they go, well, I'm just going to get treated like shit anyway. I might as well kind of treat them like shit from the get-go. Or I might as well, play this game in the book, leaving on red, all that sort of stuff. And so they're trying to prevent from getting hurt in the get-go.
Exactly.
But I would say, and this applies to both genders, you can't judge an entire gender based off a few relationships you've had or a few experiences you've had. Like I've had some bad experiences, and it's like, but I can't judge all of women or all of females and just expect other females to do the same thing. It's just silly logic, considering there's like 3 billion other males and women, men and women out there.
And I think why this happens is like an overinvestment in the significance of a relationship or finding the one. And I understand why that happens, because you're getting it from your parents, you're getting it from conversations with your grandparents. Movies. All right, I finished school. What's the next step? Get married and have kids. So I understand why it's happening. But what I want to say to people is, again, we're not going to chase our dreams, and we're not going to, maybe try that online business or try that because we're so scared it's not going to work out. Yet we're very quick to invest in another person, which is the most uncertain thing around.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? They're not willing to take a business leap or a leap career-wise, but they are ready to just let someone come into their life, give them everything, talk to them every day, and build that reliance is the word I'm looking for. And because, I don't know, you've probably been through breakups, but like I think it's just intensified when how it was, because, you talk to someone every day.
Exactly.
It's like a drug. You lose that hit and you're like...
It's exactly, they say, that breaking up is exactly the same as drug withdrawal. And I think I can attest to that, where it becomes an obsession. It's all you think about. And it's because you use that person to fill a void in your life. And a lot of the times that's why we're reaching out. We're not getting all our needs met, and we're not finding other creative ways to meet those needs. And so we're searching for it in that other person, pulling them in and taking control of them.
And we're first to experience this, relatively. Like the millennials are the first generation to go, like, if someone dies or someone just break up, you lose them from your life. Normally it used to be, you'd hang out like once a week or something.
Exactly.
But now it's like you talk 24/7, every day. You hang out maybe once a week in person, but then when you're not hanging out, you're talking every day, you're sending Snapchats, you're sending Instagrams and stuff. And so suddenly they leave your life. It's like, holy crap, I don't know how to comprehend.
Function.
Yeah, I don't know how to function. And other generations haven't experienced that level of intensity before, and we're having to experience it with no one to help us almost.
Exactly. No guidance. We don't learn about relationships in school, yet they're the most important thing.
Well, it's funny because we did to listeners out there, we both did an a little exercise at this retreat where we had to draw our life graph. And so for anyone imagining, it's just a graph, and then it's like a line graph. So you just go, you go up and down. You know, you get the job, dream job. Your life graph goes up. You get a breakup, it goes down, it goes up and down, blah blah blah. And what we kind of discovered between all 9 of us was a common trend for the big ups and the big downs between basically everyone was relationships falling apart or getting into new relationships.
Exactly.
And so the highlights of your life are good relationships, and the bad parts of your life are bad relationships. So it is arguably one of the most important things in life. You know, people talk about success. I think success isn't not just money.
Again, you're mentioning, Steve Jobs and you know, your other successful men.
Steve Jobs was one of the most successful men in the world according to society standards, or what we thought. But was he really successful? I don't consider that successful. I consider him business successful, but not successful in life.
Does he have genuine connection with humans?
Yeah. And that graph proved that relationships was such a big part of our life, yet we don't really learn about relationships in school.
Exactly. And I think, to be honest, it all starts with our parents. And a lot of the time now that we've got this social media and we've got all these things that are constantly taking up our attention, we've lost the ability to sit with ourselves. And a lot of people get uncomfortable, like terribly uncomfortable, if they're just left in a room with nothing else.
No phone.
I would suggest people try that. Give yourself an hour to lock yourself in a room and with nothing else, and just see how uncomfortable it can be.
I hate it and I suck at it, and I'm trying. Like, meditating for me is so hard. Like, even these 10 minutes. Like, sometimes I'll be sitting there going, is it nearly finished? Is it nearly finished? I'm like, this is completely not the point of why I'm meditating.
Exactly. And I think as well, sometimes, because you're left with the truth of your own thoughts and emotions and whether you're actually happy.
And for me, meditating is like, because you're supposed to have a clear head and you're supposed to be focused on your breathing and stuff. And I know it's normal. I'll be bouncing around. I'll be like, I'll be thinking about work. I'm like, well, no, I'm not supposed to be thinking about work. Just calm down.
But again, isn't that a very logical and analytical way to look at meditation? But what meditation is surrender and letting go to the moment.
So if you let go, and that's where your brain goes, sort of thing. Yeah.
So a good way to think of it, okay, you're counting 1, 2, 3. Meditation is like in between the numbers, the space in between. So 1. And that emptiness is that stillness, that presence. 1
Mississippi.
That's where the beauty is, within the space.
Yeah, awesome.
Within the silence, but we don't allow ourselves silence anymore.
100%. And I've spoken about this quite a few times on the podcast. Obviously, it's a very big thing that, you know, I'll be in a lift. I'll be anywhere for 10 seconds. Pull out your phone.
Yeah.
It's just a reflex. Pull out your phone. Like, what am I doing? I don't even know. I'm just scrolling.
Exactly.
I'll pull out TikTok and there's no sound. And I'm like, wait, I need sound. I'll pull out something and it's like, what am I even doing? It's
exactly. And why is that?
My mates and I, we play a game every Wednesday night. And the other night we were all looking at our iPhone analytics of how many times we have checked our phone. So Apple will actually show you how many times you've like opened it or just
picked it up. Wow.
Picked it up. And I think we like 150 times a day was like between 100 and 150 times was probably our average. And it's like, holy crap. Which is like insane. Break down how many numbers there's 100. 1, 2. If you were to sit here and do that, it'd probably take you like 5-10 minutes just to do it like this. And you're doing this throughout the day. And that's an average. You probably have days where you do way more. And that's a work day as well.
Yeah.
So it's like we just have lost the ability to sit by ourselves, be patient, be in the moment, actively listening to our
And I would
partners.
even argue to sit with other people. Like you were saying, even just like at a restaurant now. And I know these are such cliche things to say and easily overlooked. But I think a lot of the reason we're having all these mental health issues is because we've lost human connection. We've lost the ability to do it. Social anxiety. Again, if you're in that lift and you're just left with you and a stranger, you know, are you able to have a conversation? Are you able to use that space to create connection? A lot of us would say no.
And how many of us would just pull out our phone and not do anything, but just to avoid conversation or to
what
avoid.
What is that? Like, as a human race, why are we doing that?
You're not going to talk to someone if they're on their phone and they've got headphones in. So it's like, you know, people do it like when you walk past the cute guys at school and you just pretend to be on your phone or something.
Exactly.
It's the same thing.
To make yourself comfortable, and we've got to start to question, like, why are we doing these things?
Because pulling out your phone is like, it's like a universal thing to say, kind of don't bother me.
It's a block. It's a block to connection. And what other blocks are you putting in your life to, block yourself from genuine human connection? And I think one of them, back to relationships, is that overthinking and that obsession on that one person. You know, what's the outcome going to be? Because that's blocking you from sitting with yourself. What do I actually want? What do I want?
It's also super important. I'm not a dating expert or anything. So feel free to don't take this advice. But like, I see so many people like they want a relationship and then so they go out looking for one, and as a result they'll kind of just whoever comes to them and gives them that instant, like as we mentioned in the car, there's men who are quite famous, like Ted Ted Bundy, Dirty John. There's that who are masters at manipulating women to get to make them feel like they're so loved. And they'll do that and they'll manipulate women, take advantage of them. And so again, when you're looking for a relationship and someone comes giving you what you want, you're ignoring all the red flags or all the other signs because you just want that relationship. Because you want to be dating just like all your friends are dating, and you can go on double dates and you can have all that fun stuff. But I think it's beauty if you're just open to anything and it just comes naturally. It might take 3, 4, 5 years.
Exactly. You got to be so careful, I think. The second you're chasing and the second you're running after something, and people say the cliche, oh yeah, a relationship will just find you when you least expect it, which is not helpful information to that poor person who's wanting a relationship, who's wanting that connection. That's completely hopeless information. But it is that people are going to mirror the current state you're in. So if you write a list of what you want in a partner and you actually sit and think, wow, am I these things? If you're not, that's exactly where you start in terms of wanting to find someone. You need to sort of be building these skills, this self-awareness yourself before you can even imagine having that healthy relationship. And I myself have gotten into that trap of like desperately wanting that love, not being able to give it to myself, and then getting myself in really dangerous situations where at the start it seems all perfect, gift-giving, love bombing, everything Hollywood tells you, like, oh, you're amazing, you're incredible, meet my friends, and you become reliant on that. It becomes that addiction that we talked about, and it becomes very hard to get out of. So they say you need to love yourself first, as a cliche, but it's like, okay, how can you actually do that? And I think ultimately working on things that you're interested and passionate about is how you build your confidence first.
And I think, I've heard someone else say this, so I don't want to take credit for it, but it's like, this was for young guys, it applies to women as well. Don't chase women, chase success, and women will follow. Don't chase men, chase success and what you want to be, and the man will come to you.
Exactly. Not even the man as in like this man's going to see that, but the situations. I even look at it like going on the retreat, you're suddenly met with like incredible like men that just want to better themselves, that want to suck everything they can out of life. They're the people you want to meet, not necessarily your person who's bored on Tinder, who's literally swiping as they're taking a dump. Like, is that how you want to create authentic, meaningful connection?
Not that there's anything wrong. Like, I know a lot of people have been in strong relationships,
100%.
But Tinder's just a gateway, right?
Yeah, it is a gateway, and I think there's a way to use it and there's a way to present yourself, and it's definitely, I would say it's networking. Don't look at it dating, but it's very dangerous because you start this intention. The intention's there that this is going to be in a relationship, so it doesn't let you know someone as a good friend or see where things are going to go, because you've said already without saying anything, I'm single, hopefully, and I'm looking for a relationship, and you almost bypass all the other things. Are we compatible? Do we have similar interests? Do we see ourselves going the same way in the future?
It's important stuff. And I was going to say, like, especially with Tinder, obviously you're on there probably either one. I think it's 3 reasons you're on Tinder.
Okay.
Either 1, you're there to hook up. Number 2, you're there for a relationship. Or 3, you're there to make yourself feel good and not actually really do anything. You're just there for an ego boost. And so it can be really dangerous when you're not the same match. And so if you're just there for the ego boost and some guy's just like really into you and stuff, and you're never going to meet up with him and you're leading him on, or vice versa, or you just want to hook up and they just want a relationship. And so it just falls apart and it can get so messy. And, as we mentioned, if you just focus to that question you said when you said like, oh, I just want a relationship. Oh, well, it'll come to you. Yeah. That's not good advice. It kind of is true, but if what they need to understand is it will come to you, but right now don't focus on finding a relationship. Focus on improving yourself. Yeah. And that way you're going to improve the chances of someone coming to you.
Exactly. And it's like, well, how do you do that? And that's what I would say. Obviously, a bit more tricky in the time of COVID, but not impossible. It's at the coffee shop, making a conversation with someone. Wow, I really like your shirt. It's nice. But not having the expectation that it's going anywhere. That's just a compliment to someone you find attractive. You take all that pressure out of it. You take, all the expectations out of the situation, and who knows where it can go.
It's exactly like when guys do this a lot more than girls, definitely. Yeah. They go to clubs to hook up. Well, I know girls do as well. Let's just say guys and girls do this. They go to a club to hook up. And like, man, that's bad, because I've seen guys, they'll go to a club to hook up and they won't get it and their night's ruined. And it's like, well, your night's ruined because you had the expectation of hooking up. What if you just go to a club and if it happens naturally, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Oh, but actually you're going to dance with your mates and have a good time. Exactly. And,
exactly.
Get a few cardio hours in.
So I wanted to also chat about, so I saw this thing on TikTok and it was like, men buy women flowers. What's the equivalent for a woman?
That is a great question.
And I spoke with my friends and they were just like, oh, I would get my boyfriend, sushi, or I'd get him a drink or something. It was cute and there was all really nice answers. But in the TikTok and the comments, most of the women and the guys were saying, like a blowjob or sex or something sexual. And it was like, how is that right? Man buys her flower. Like, that's such a toxic.
Yeah, it's like, and where does it come from? But I think sex is shamed. And I even noticed when you're talking about, some people go to TikTok to hook up. Like, it's almost like a shameful thing. And that's a problem we're having in our society, that why is sex so shamed? Potentially, you know, because it's not being done respectfully. It's something that we need to explore. But one thing that really helped me understand men's sexuality and really respect it is that men feel that, you know, sexual expression, that horniness, if you will, with the same intensity that women feel emotions. And as a guy, if you turn that around and go, wow, when I'm really horny and it's really overtaking me, you know, as a natural biological desire, as it should, that's how a woman can feel upset. That's how a woman can feel hurt. And when you learn to relate to each other like that, you can make it a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And it just links back to what we were saying, like men and women are different. I feel like just right now we're trying to be like equality and everything, which I love, but it's also... It's
a barrier.
There is no pure equality between men and women because we are different. You know, we talk about sports. Obviously, I think men are always going to be paid higher because they're just physically built stronger and they're better performers at sports. And then we can link back to, you know, nurses and more caring stuff. Women are way better at the caring and emotional stuff, as we mentioned. It's this understanding that we are different. And as you just mentioned, the way we deal with different situations with how men, you know, being horny and women being emotional and that sort of stuff is really important, that we understand that.
And respect it and communicate about it. And say, okay, I understand, you know, that you have this sexual need. Well, for me, I have my own boundaries and barriers. I would really like to connect to you first. I really like to know you first. And I don't have sex that's, you know, not within a relationship. So that's how you protect yourself from that. You've set your own, you know, boundaries and barriers. To a man as well, you know, you might want to say, look, like, I understand that you want to talk to me about your day. Right now I'm a little bit stressed. If you give me a few minutes and we can sit down together and I can hold that space for you. But I say always ask permission. So it's all about consent. Ask consent before you have sex with someone, but also ask consent before you emotionally unload all this baggage onto someone. Yeah, that's good.
And ask for consent when you don't want to talk to them, because because she's gonna feel crap if I just take a day off. She's gonna be like, what did I do? Why isn't he talking to me? He just wants some time off. What if you said, hey, I'm just having a lot now. I'll message you tonight. I just want to deal with some stuff. She'll probably be fine with it. She'll probably go, how can I help?
Perfect.
It's like, I'll just talk to me tonight. I'd love to have a chat or something. So just ask consent for that as well, as you mentioned. Because then otherwise she's just going to be stressed, or he's just going to be stressed. Like,
I think we've got this great fear of honest communication. Why are we so scared to bite the bullet and just communicate? You know, is it because we want to be agreeable to each other? We're scared if we say something they're not going to like you. Honestly, like, people can feel when you're not being honest and you're not being authentic, and you're the only person that's going to lose out. So just say it. It's liberating. It's amazing.
Also like and we spoke about this in actually a previous episode of dating, was like, we're scared to communicate because if I show too much emotion first, we're in a competition of who can care the least, who can leave me on, like, if she leaves me on scene for half an hour, I'm going to leave her on scene for half an hour, that sort of thing. It's
exactly.
Like, I want to talk to her right now, but I'm not going to because I don't want to seem too desperate.
Exactly.
It's like, but if you want to talk to her, just talk to her. And I mean, I see one of my biggest tips for Tinder or online dating is actually respond straight away, because you need to catch them in conversation. Otherwise you can have these horrible, like, one day responses, and it's like just like a week and you've said nothing.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh my God.
This disjointed. But on that as well, it's like, if you're having that anxiety within yourself about someone replying, someone not getting to you, I think that's something else to really start to explore. Yeah, it's like, okay, this person's not replying to me. I'm feeling really anxious, and I've definitely been there.
100%.
What have I done? Do they not like me? Do they not want to be with me? I thought things were going really well. I told all my friends about this person. These racing thoughts start, right? And you can go crazy. But it's like, okay, what void was this person filling for me? Like, am I not getting connection in my life? Should I organize that, you know, day with a friend? Should I talk to my parents over dinner and genuinely ask about their feelings? It's like, there's other ways you can meet those needs.
It all links back to improving yourself. And it's actually funny when it comes to improving yourself and exactly that. There's like not underground. There's like these two guys, or a group of guys who do like on they help guys with like they call them like pickup artists. But then they're kind of not really, because what they actually focus on is how to improve yourself and how to become more attractive to women. So it's not sleazy like tactics and stuff, which are obviously still exist. But this group of men, they do like, how do we improve yourself? How do we make you feel more confident? Let's talk about, you know, let's go ask out 5 women each day, so that way you get used to rejection, understand it's actually not a bad thing, and that, you know, it's fine, and it's all that sort of stuff. And so that's more, they more focus on growing yourself, and that's
exactly.
And they're worldwide for knowing how to get women.
Yeah, and I'd argue that the why men love bitches, they're trying to sort of preach that same philosophy of like, be busy so that you're not having to purposely space out a reply. Have other things going on in your life so that that person doesn't become your everything and the priority straight away. So
true. Because the biggest times when I've been like that, when I've been going, why isn't she responding and stuff, is when I'm doing, like, my life is really slow and I'm not doing anything. And I'm just like at home while she's out doing stuff. And I'm like, and then as soon as I get busy and my business picks up and I'm doing all this stuff, I forget about it.
Exactly.
And I'm like, I'm not checking Tinder I'm checking it like once every 4 days or something.
Exactly.
Because you're busy. And so it's almost like that natural, you're not leaving it unseen because you haven't actually seen it yet because you're busy.
Yeah, but it's like, how can I naturally, achieve that?
Yeah, super important. Awesome. This has been a really good conversation. But before we wrap up, I'd love to just know your final thoughts on what would be your number one piece of advice for the younger generation. It can be around anything. It doesn't have to be related to what we talked about. It can be, job, career, relationships, anything you want. What would be your number one piece of advice for someone who's like 18 years old?
I would say probably surrender and let go to the outcome. It's okay not to know where you're going. Try so hard to live a bit more day to day. Because like we said, if you trust, those doors are going to open for you. If you're doing something you're passionate and you're inspired about, it's going to fall into place. I think you see it, as a child, what did you spend hours doing? How did you get into that flow state? How can you bring a little bit more of that into your adulthood?
Yeah, amazing. And we spoke about this earlier on, just with the midwifery. It's like women just need to let nature take its course.
Yeah, let what will happen.
Don't think it's going to be perfect. Don't think this and this, because you're setting yourself up for expectations. Yeah. So it's just letting it happen.
Exactly.
And that needs to apply, I think, so importantly, it needs to apply with careers and like when you're choosing a career, like just let it happen. And when I say let it happen, unless like me and you who actually kind of knew what we wanted to do, I sort of didn't, but you did. You want to be midwife, so you went and studied midwifery, which is great. But for someone who doesn't know what they want to do, it's like, don't just jump into something because all your friends are doing it, because your mum and dad are telling you, your teachers are telling you to go to uni or whatever it is. Like, take a gap year, slow down, and let it go, and then figure out what you want to do, because you might meet people that are going to lead to this, 1,000 doors, right? Lead to this, 100%. Blah blah blah, and then who knows where you're going to be.
Yeah, and even for me, like, even though I had this set path, things went wrong along the way. I got jobs that I didn't get into the jobs that I might have wanted to, and things like that happened. And I think every time I was open-minded to the experience, it ended up being the best thing ever. But every time I was like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe I didn't get that job. And I really ruminated on it. It was awful. So it's being open-minded to whatever twists and turns life's going to take you on.
Awesome. And where can people find you if they want to find out more about you? You mentioned you put out some content. Like, where's the best place to find you?
So on Instagram, I have Midwife Tylah, and that's the same on TikTok as well. So that's probably the best, or just Tylah Jane. Yeah,
and that'll all be links in the bio. Otherwise, Tylah, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
That's it for this episode of the Driven Young podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. That means the world to me. And if you got some value out of it, please shoot me a message on Instagram or reach out to me. Or I would love for you to leave a rating or review on this podcast. So make sure you are subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.